I had been hearing on the news at that time period about people trying to convince others that the Holocaust never existed. And when I was checking around, it wasn't taught in school either for a lot. So I decided that that's something we can't forget, since that was so horrible, and the fact that we do not ever want to repeat that again. I think we learn from history, and I firmly believe that if we do not know history, we will repeat history because we do not know when to stop it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Author Spotlight brought to you by Apex Media Global. I'm your host, Monica, and I am honored to be joined today by C.S. Basham. Her book, Defiance in the Face of Hell, compiles 6 harrowing first accounts of Holocaust survival. Her book gives a respectful yet heartfelt glimpse into the lives of people that were changed forever during World War II. So, Carol, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Carol, I was going through your book and um, I can really tell that your heart was in it. It was compiled in such a beautiful way. And I wanted to ask what inspired you to collect 6 stories in particular?
Well, I had been hearing on the news at that time period about people trying to convince others that the Holocaust never existed. And when I was checking around, it wasn't taught in school either for a lot. So I decided that that's something we can't forget, since that was so horrible, and the fact that we do not ever want to repeat that again. Not in, we don't want it repeated, much less in that mass destructive way. So I thought about it for a while, and then when I was at church one day, a voice told me I should write a book. Well, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't even know where to find anybody. So it took me a couple of weeks or so, and then I decided to write letters to synagogues. And then and through the synagogues is how I reached these individuals, and they contacted me, and they volunteered. So, and I think I did a pretty good job of getting 6 varieties of things, the horrors that went on, but not just in the concentration camps, but also the fact of how they had to go to, one went to the gulags, one, the men, they were inducted into the armies and then ran for their lives. And like in Joseph's case, he couldn't even carry a gun, but yet he had to be a soldier. But Jews were not allowed to carry guns in the Hungarian army. So I think the wide perspective of just how bad everything was and just how desperate people were to survive, not just from the concentration camps, but everywhere. The survival was very difficult.
What made you decide to write this book? I mean, why is this so close to your heart?
I just feel that I'm a fan of history. I think we learn from history, and I firmly believe that if we do not know history, we will repeat history because we do not know when to stop it. And so, with my love for history and the fact that I felt that we needed this information out there so people could understand not just that it happened, but and facts and figures, but the fact that people were involved, individuals, get to know the individuals that survived, and to make it more real for those who even question the possibility of it not happening. So I wanted to make it real for the world.
And thank you for doing that. I think it's really important. It's talked about, but I don't think it's talked about as much. And I wanted to ask, what made you decide to tell these specific stories, these 6 stories?
Well, we have Dasha, who was 10, Elizabeth, who was a teenager. We have Lucia, who was a young adult. She was barely 18. And then the 3 guys, they were all very young. Joseph and George were teenagers, and Dasha's husband was, and he's just more in with Dasha. I mean, not Dasha, excuse me, but Lucia. He was young too. So these were six individuals with youth, but of varying ages, and especially Dasha, who was 10. That was the most compelling story for me.
What was your process like while collecting these stories?
Well, when I received the letters of these individuals, I contacted them and I had a list of questions. I did interviews with them. Then I wrote a preliminary story, and I had them review the basic information that they gave me to make sure I had correctly recorded it. And then I did my research to make sure I knew where they were, where the towns were, how it was located in connection with the different concentration camps and labor camps. And it just kind of built from there. But every time I rewrote, and I double checked everything. And before I even did the final draft, I sent each individual their story and had them to edit to make sure I had it correct before it went to final. And then that when they sent it back with their approval, then I went to the final copy. It took a long time, but it was worth it.
Hmm. Is there a specific background that you have that really influenced your approach in your writing and even your approach towards these people?
Not really. I mean, I wasn't, I did major in English language and our literature. I majored in education, and I had a minor in history. But basically, it was just what many people call winging it. I just thought, I just felt like if this works this way, this is how I should do it. Basically, I did what I felt was the right way to do it. And it's not that I had it always right. I oftentimes had to go back, change things around because that was not the correct way to do it. So I just sort of learned as I went.
So you were kind of intuitive.
In some degrees, yes, especially when in my desire to treat each individual with a great deal of respect and truthfulness. But yes, I've read enough books to know the way they should line up. But education wise, that way, I do not have it. I'm not a journalist.
But you're a natural, I can
Thank you.
tell. While you were immersing yourself in these stories, did you notice like a common theme among all of them?
The theme of the women more so than the men because the women had it really rough, especially Elizabeth and Dasha. They
Mm.
beaten and tortured and worked almost to death. Those were the common things about them that were and they were in concentration camps such as Auschwitz. And the men, they managed to get into labor camps or when Joseph's place and George, he was drafted to the army and he managed to get out and they managed to escape on their own with their own wits and survive. But the women were way too young for that. They didn't have the experience that the men had in order to and the connections. The only connection Elizabeth had were some girls from her hometown. Dasha unfortunately had zero connections, and she suffered the worst long term, I think.
How long did it take you to finish everything and make it into a book?
10 years.
10 years of just listening and retelling yourself these stories and narratives. It must have been emotionally overwhelming for you, no?
Oh, it was at times. At times I thought, this is not something I need to do. I can't do this. And this can't be true. I mean, I even doubted myself when I started learning all the horrors that happened. Human beings could not do this, but they did. And I had to go through a lot of canceling self-denial that anybody in the world, one human being could destroy another human being to the depths that they just tried to destroy um, the Jewish people. Not only the Jewish people, but there were other people there too that were not Jewish, but the mass majority of those murdered were Jews because Hitler hated them.
How did you remain steadfast amongst those emotions that you were feeling? Because sometimes when you're overwhelmed, it's easy to just shut down and just say, you know what, maybe this is not for me. But how did you keep going on?
My kids were little, so when I needed a break, we went and did things together. We went on hikes. We went on whatever I could do. I took them on hikes. I took them on trips, anything to keep my mind off of it for a while. My kids were my
Mm.
escape because they saw the world differently, and so I used their eyes to rest.
Did they read your book?
I don't know. I gave them one. My daughter, I think she said she did, but I do not know. They lived with me writing them, so I'm not sure if they read it or not. I didn't
Do
quiz
you
them.
think you said that they viewed the world differently back then? Do you think that your book must have shifted something in them?
I think more of the fact that, well, I talked about the book too, and so they
Mhm.
had a good understanding. And I think the fact that as they grew older, they saw, as most people do, as all people do, we see the world differently as we grow older. And they also saw what was going on in the world because I made sure they did. As they grew older, I made sure they knew things that were going on in the world appropriate for their age group until they were adults. And then I continued to encourage them to watch the news, read, make your own decisions. Don't listen to others. Decide for yourself. And so I think the book had a lot to do with it.
That's really interesting. I mean, everybody wants to decide for themselves, right? But sometimes just there's so many voices around, in media or just communities that might not be factual. So how can you tell our viewers or even me to know how to decide if something is really right or how something feels right?
Gather all your facts, know what to see, and then determine and look with an honest eye what you feel is the truth. And if you know your history, then you'll be able to determine that truth a lot faster. Say, well, it's like if you go to what's recently happened last October in Israel, some say it happened, some say it didn't. So
Mhm.
in order to decide what you believe, you have to go back and decide. Study your history, know between the two countries, know between the two, know what the organizations are, know who does what, and then you decide who is doing what and what you firmly believe. But do not let a group decide for you or your friend decide for you. You've got to make your own decision. If you don't, then you will be easily led, like sheep. You will be easily led to do things that you would probably never agree upon if you had learned the truth for yourself.
That thank you for saying that. And in this generation, I think a lot of people really want to be active and really want to contribute to society, but I feel like some might be neutral, maybe because they don't have the information that they need. How, what would your advice be? Like, if someone wants to really know about the history, but it might be too overwhelming, how do you think they can start and be well informed?
Start small. Read small. Read small articles on it. Um, or they use the internet a lot, but I would suggest books to more so than the internet because the internet is twisted in many different ways. But you could look at the internet, but then look at a book, look at an article, see how they match up. The truth will match up quicker than the not truth. if someone is telling the truth in this one and they're telling the truth in that one, you're going to see those truths join up. But if they're stretching the truth or just making up their own stories, then there'll be a story here and a story there. And if the words are identical, then you know one copied after the other. If they're separate but the stories match up, then you're going to have to say, well, this one matched up in that one, but what is the truth? Because sometimes nowadays they match their stories. If this one says it, the other one says it. Because there's a saying, if you lie enough times, people will believe it to be the truth.
Mhm.
And so you have to figure out which is the lie and which is the truth. And it's not easy because most of the time nowadays, like you say, people want to matter. They want to do something. They want to matter in society, they with their friends, and they also do not want to cross their friends. And that is the problem you're going to be in if you don't want to cross your friends. Some people will say, well, if you go and you believe this, then we won't be your friend. Or so you have to be willing to risk everything for the truth. But it'll be worth it in the end because you'll gain so much more.
Absolutely. And the search for the truth, like I said, it can be overwhelming. And I want to go back to, the emotion aspect of it because it can be anxiety inducing sometimes, or it can be too much, and I think that's why sometimes people dissociate or remain neutral because they just don't want to deal with those emotions. So, w- how do you regulate your emotions? Because it's easy to get scared sometimes, especially even when you look at history. So, how do you manage your emotions while you're seeking the truth?
What my suggestion is when you feel overwhelmed, you step back and step away from it and do something that you really like that will help you just to regather yourself, to regroup. And you keep doing that each time until you can handle each thing. But your emotions can get overwhelmed. You can, to the point where you don't want to learn anymore. It's just too much of the horror or truth that you don't want to hear. And if you don't want to hear it, then you won't learn it. So the best way to do is when you get to the point where I can't take any more of this, then step away. Think about other things, do other things, go to the movies, go out with your friends, whatever you like to do. And then when you feel calm again, go back and try and do some more of whatever you're doing, your research, your reading, whatever it is that you're doing. But take it in small bits and pieces, small bites, until you can take it in larger bites. Don't let it overwhelm you.
I think this process requires a lot of attunement with your own body, but as well as with the world, knowing what feels right for you, but also, like you said, having that honest eye and seeking the truth. So, thank you for that. I think I really needed to hear that as well, because sometimes, especially again in this generation, it's easy to just lean in towards what is the most popular belief or popular idea because we just don't want to deal with the overwhelm while seeking the truth. So thank you for sharing that. Now, going back to the book, what was the most exciting thing that you found out? Because sometimes when we step into something, we kind of have our biases in the back of our heads that we want to confirm. But when you did this book, were you surprised by something that you found?
I think it was the love story between Elizabeth and George. They met 3 times before he asked her out, and they met in different countries. Each time is in a different country. And I think the fact that they kept meeting and then finally went out, and then he wanted to marry her, and she said no because he didn't have anything. And he told her, well, we don't have anything together, but then we can build something. So I think it was the love story that I liked. That I thought it was the really a nice bright spot because who could find love like that when you're in Hungary, France, and then the United States, New York, and all the crowds of people you meet up again. Destiny had its way of putting those two together. And I
That's
think that
beautiful.
like I like that one.
That's beautiful. Now, what do you think the stories have how do you think the stories will have a role in making sure that people remember what happened, remember the truth, especially as we are losing firsthand survivors?
I think if they accept what each individual has told them that happened, then that will help them to see future problems that possibly could happen or are in the beginnings of happening. And then they can accept what's going on. And then they can speak out and say, no, this is wrong. You cannot do that. You cannot hurt these people. We're all the same. So I think if they accept the horrors, and that's the only way they're going to do it is if they have accept all the horrors that happened, then they can learn to help prevent them from occurring again, or at least in such a large mass. There's always going
Mm,
to be horrors, but we don't have to have it in that degree.
that's really interesting because I'm starting to think, like even as individuals, we have to face our shadows to truly become who we really are. And in the same way, in society, collectively, we also have to face the shadow in the world to really move forward as a society. And again, I really want to thank you for doing this book. I know it must have not been easy to do that, but you did. And thank you. Um, Now, talking about history, do you think that we're repeating history now?
Yes, I do. I certainly do. We can look in the United States of how we're repeating it. If you look in, go back to Germany, the people had problems because of they lost the war in the World War One. Their land was decimated. They owed all this money um, to other countries because of that. They then the depression hit and it hit them hard. And then this man came up and said, "I will make you great. I will build this country up. You are the race that needs to survive." And then he starts telling them who creates their problems, who's making it hard on them and teaching them. He started teaching them to hate. And it was already anti-Semitism was already there, but he built upon what was there into and made it into his whole realm of power, basically. I mean, he did. He built Germany up, and but people did not stop to think what they were signing on to. They joined in because they were desperate. Desperate people do desperate things, and then they learned. Then they hated, and then they just did what they were told because if they didn't, then they could be shot or killed because they didn't do what the orders were, like hit a Jew, beat a Jew, steal his food. If they didn't do it, then they felt that they could be placed in jail or in a concentration camp. That terror then ruled them. Desperation controlled them, and then as it grew, Hitler used terror to rule his country. And that's what happens when people are desperate. They follow the light of hope, of survival. And when you've got a powerful speaker who promises you everything you want to hear and starts to deliver at some point, then you're going to follow him if you don't have your strong roots already built. You will follow him or her. And
Yeah,
Hitler's a prime
unfortunately.
example.
I'm curious what you think. Do you think that the leaders now also kind of have like that commonality? And do you think that they also prey on the desperation of the people today?
Absolutely. Look what's going on in the United States, how people are becoming the inflation, the separation of races. already teaching the races to start hating one another. The flooding of the borders. They are desperate. They are separating and building up. If you look in these, in the, even in Mein Kampf or Karl Marx, you'll see a lot. This is how you break it down. You start in the school systems. You break down the family. Remember what they did to the families who were speaking out about whether they approved or not of what was being taught in the schools, and how they even considered them domestic terrorists for speaking out at the school board meetings. These are all ways of breaking down the family unit. And when you break down the family unit, which is what Hitler did, you have people start telling on each other. And when you start telling each other, you have no family unit. Or when you're taught that your parents don't need to know this because they're not the ones who should be teaching you this. Or you need to tell us what your parents say, teaching kids to distrust or even dislike their parents. That's all part of it. The family unit goes. And that's the strongest point in a nation, the family units. Because you
And
build
that's
a
the
family,
strong
you build protection. You build where you shoot loyalty is the word I'm looking for. You build loyalty within one another, and then you take that loyalty, what you built within your family unit, and then you build it with your friends, and then you build it with your country. You're taught to be loyal to your country, to protect it. But if you're not taught any of that, and you're taught to hate the country, or the country's no good because they did this and that all wrong, um, then the country's losing, and the people who are the leaders who are doing this, which is happening all over the world, are winning.
Mm, yeah, you're absolutely right. And how do you hope the younger generation who are being removed from these events, like the time is passing, how do you hope for the younger generation that will connect with the story?
The best way to get a younger generation, because less and less of them are reading books before
Mm,
they go to, well, the audio tapes, they can use those, but movies, historically based, truthful based movies, build it to what they like, but put the storyline in what they like, so they will watch it and learn. They'll believe the movie over anything else. If you see it in the movie and you've got the characters you really like, then they're going to have a better base for it. So if you do, that's one way of doing it. Putting it in a movie form, so it gets out there and people talk about it. Like The Chosen, that got a lot of people talking. They put it in movie form. If it stayed in a book, it wouldn't have gone as far. I mean, there've been a lot of people who read it, or probably, but not to the extent that The Chosen went with the movie.
mm.
So that's a good way to get to the younger people, I think.
That's a good one. I didn't really think about it that way. If you're comfortable, can you share like the list of historically correct movies that you
I
think?
I don't know the list. I don't have a very big list, but I'll tell you some that are fun to watch would be
Hmm.
Sergeant York. Now he was in World War I. That is pretty historical fact. I mean, there's always some fiction in it, but basically that's what it was. That he did do it. It was true. Charles Lindbergh's flight. I would talk about. I would say the right now I could have met. I don't know. I can't remember him all. I'm not.
No
It's been
problem.
a while,
Yeah, I
but
put you on
some
the
of them
spot
like.
there.
Yeah, I'm a big well they like the Band of Brothers, things like that. Those are
Mm.
all based on truth. And basically, and as far as historically, everything won't be the same. There will be some artistic measures taken, but as long as this message is true and stays the same, that's the important thing. Because we never know what everybody says out there in those days. I couldn't tell you what I said yesterday.
Like, Carol, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. And before I let you go, do you have any messages to, to the older generation and as well as the younger generation?
I want the best suggestion I can think of are our children.
Mm.
And Dasha was 10. She lost her childhood. And she probably, if PTSD had been diagnosed back then, at that point in time, she would have been a prime candidate because she could never regain the hug of her mother again. She could not regain going on her first date, going to school, graduation. She never was able to do any of that or speak to her mother about her future husband. Nothing. So my thought is our children. Listen and take good care of our kids and teach them truth, teach them right, not to hate, not to dislike someone because of their skin color or their religion or they're right-handed and you're left-handed, but the truth. And to accept people. We're all the same on the inside. The surgeon wouldn't know the difference.
Absolutely. I have one last question that just popped in my head. Carol, do you think there will be a breakthrough where we stop repeating the cycle of history? And how do you think we can achieve that?
I don't think there will be because we do not learn.
Mm.
And that's the sad part. If we would learn, we could, but we do not learn. And this is an imperfect world, and it will always remain an imperfect world. We're going to repeat as long as we do not learn our history. But the thing is, do we have to repeat so much of it? Can we slow the cycle down? And if we do repeat, may it not be the worst of history, just the silly mistakes of history. I mean, we do not have the Crusades. We learn from them. To, we don't do that anymore. But then again, did we learn from the Crusades? Do we still fight religion over religion? So we can learn, but we'll never learn enough to not repeat. We all repeat our mistakes. If you stop to think, you learn to do something and you say, no, I won't do this again because that was wrong. And then you turn around and you do it again. And you thought, why in the world did I do that? I know that's not the way you do it. But yet you
Mm.
repeat it yourself. And that's what we do in history. We repeat. Well, most of the time we don't stop and say, I learned not to do that. So
Yeah.
no, I'm
But
sorry. That's kind of like a downer, but it's the reality of life. There's always going to be good people and bad people, and that we just would like to see the good outweigh the bad. That's the best we can hope for, I think. And that's a good hope. That's a good thing because without, and with the bad people, you can, however you want to classify bad people, you can learn from them, and you can learn why they do what they do, so you can teach your kids not to do that. I mean, why would someone want to just go down the street and stab you? Well, you have to figure out, are they sick? Do they have a mental illness?
mm,
Or do they hate? So it varies. So it just hope for the good to outweigh the bad. But I still think this is a great place to live.
yeah, yeah, it's a better place to live now because there are people like you that, keep reminding us of the truth. And you even made it easier for us because you spent 10 years and we could just read one book and we will know everything, and we will remember. And thank you again, Carol. I have one last question. I think I don't know if you can tell, I love talking to you.
No,
I'm
thank
just
you.
like curious. Every time you're saying something, a question pops in my head, and I'm like trying to bring it back to my memory before I forget. Um, Another question would be, do you think, okay, what is one thing that we're overlooking in this generation that you think is a repetition of history?
The education.
Mm,
We're overlooking our education. We're teaching things that do not teach our children or to be model person, not the model so much, but healthy individuals. We're teaching them our perspectives, our ideas, our likes and dislikes, when we should be teaching them the subject matter of, if we're teaching history or music or science, stick with the subject matter. But that's what we're losing is our education. And the kids do not want to learn. We have a lot of students who are not learning or far behind. They've lost interest in school a long time ago. And with each child that does not learn, we lose. We who knows what that person could be if we could just kept their interest in learning, wanting to be something, someone, do something that they really liked. And that is, I think, our biggest loss.
mm, yeah. But I guess there's your book, Defiance in the Face of Hell, to supplement our knowledge and education. I know, you know, there's a rise of people dropping out of school, college, but like you said, there will always be movies for your book. Now, Carol, can you tell us where we can find your book, more information about it, and
I
you know, how do we get in touch?
um on my book, I don't know exactly how much is still in print because it's been 15 years, but you could get it on Amazon, and but that's about it right now, as far as I know. Now, if I'm wrong, but I do not believe bookstores are carrying it right now, at least any major bookstore. But try Amazon. But that's my book. Those are the shoes. If you forget the book, name of the book, just look for the book with all the shoes. The lost souls that were killed. That's what the shoes represent. Those who died.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you.
You're
That's about all the questions that I have, but I know after our interview, I will have so many more. And I think it's good. It's good because we're starting a conversation. I think we should talk about it more. We should talk about history more. We should really dig deeper and understand and, yeah, introspect, understand our own biases and why we believe what we believe in and if it's the truth. So, again, thank you, Carol. It has been an honor to talk to you today. These conversations don't happen so often. So thank you for this rare opportunity. I know our viewers also appreciate that. Thank you for giving a voice to these people and their lives matter. And thank you for amplifying their voice. And to our viewers, again, look for the book with the most shoes on Amazon, Defiance in the Face of Hell by C.S. Basham. Please grab it, start conversations with it. And if you like conversations like this with remarkable, insightful authors from all around the world, like Carol, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and engage in the comments. Again, conversations like these are so important. And this has been Monica for Author Spotlight by Apex Media Global. And until then, stay curious and seek out the truth. Thank you.